So, Peter, we're ready to go.
20 seconds. Just waiting on the Zoom to load up.
Okay, let me know.
Recording in progress. Recording in progress.
All right, we're live.
All right, thanks. This meeting will come to order. This is the frosty January 21st, 2025 meeting of the Landmarks and Historic Districts Board. Present are Vicky Kahn, Tim Ganettis, Susan Sherry Clark, Larry Jones, Samantha Malone, Bill Hine, Stephanie Davis, and myself, Ed Wisnowski, as well as our ex officio member, Julie Green, town historian. This meeting is being conducted under New York State and town law that provides for remote and in-person participation. Individuals may undertake remote participation by navigating to the town clerk's agenda and minutes portal page on the town website. Individuals wishing to view only can click on the live link to be found on that page. Individuals wishing to participate with comments can click on the link for that purpose, or otherwise find the link on the published agenda of the Landmarks Board for tonight. For comments, individuals would have to identify themselves by name and place of business or residence for the information of the minutes. Zoom participation is being moderated tonight by Peter of CTV. And if you wish to participate via Zoom, use the chat or raise hand function in order to bring attention to CTV for the agenda item that you are interested in. To reduce wait times, our practice has been generally to proceed with agenda items for individuals that have made themselves known and the agenda item of interest. The first item of agenda for our meeting tonight is the approval of minutes for December 17th, 2024. Stephanie distributed them to all members. Were there any further comments?
I had comments from Bill and comments from Susan, all of which have been incorporated into a revised set of minutes.
So, on that basis, is there further comment on the minutes? If not, do I hear a motion to approve? Moved by Vicky, seconded by Susan. All in favor, say aye. Aye. The minutes are approved. We have a number of individuals here for our agenda items, including 602 Montauk Highway, East Quogue, and that was the subject of a construction permit application. And Stephanie, you provided some comment on it.
Yes.
I'll show you if I can get it.
We reviewed an application, a construction application for this property back in 2022. At that time, we did not have an objection to the proposed work, but we did have some recommendations for reuse of historic materials. It appears that this building was actually constructed in about 1910, and it appears that it is associated with some the Aldrich family and the Carter family, both of which have been in East Quogue for a very, very long time. In 2022, it was proposed to make a addition to the northwest corner of the dwelling, a roofed-over deck addition to the northeast corner of the dwelling, and a chimney enclosure near the northeast corner of the dwelling. And as I said, we didn't have an objection to the work proposed at that time. Since that time, the work has begun, but the work is more extensive than the original construction application. And I prepared a series of photographs here to show. Let's see, can we go back one, Ed? One page, please. One more. Yes. This shows the front of the house as it looked in 2022. And then the lower photo shows how the house looks in January now. And what's changed here is that there is the addition that's going on the northeast side is, which you can see on the lower right there with the plywood over the second story piece of it. That addition projects out much more than the original proposed change. This is the side of the house that would be visible from Montauk Highway, except for the fact that there is a hedge in front of it. The porch is, as you can see, being rebuilt. We did get some additional information this afternoon indicating that the porch posts that used to exist there, which were turned posts, and they had decorative filigree at the top, which you can see in the top picture there, they are being reportedly restored and reinstalled on the finished project, which was one of the things that we wanted to see on the last go-around with this application. Ed, if you could turn to the next page. This essentially shows the back of the house. It faces away from Montauk Highway. And what was originally proposed was an addition not to that wing that's sticking out the back there, but there were additions proposed on the side. The currently proposed work, which is essentially done in terms of forming it up, is what's shown on the lower right photograph. There are now essentially that back gable end has been engulfed in additions on both sides of it. And there's a new wraparound porch being added, which was not, I believe, in the original application. The one thing that's good about this change is that there had been a very awkward chimney for a wood stove that used to exist, and you can see it in the upper photograph there coming out of the right side of the house and extending up above. The original construction proposed to enclose that chimney. The current proposal eliminates that chimney entirely, which I think is frankly an improvement. Ed, if you could turn to the next page. Okay. This is a picture of the facade that faced Lewis Road, okay, because this house is on a corner and the side road is Lewis Road, and this is the side that's most visible at this point from a public street. You can see at the top, back in 2022, there's an original window. It was one of the only two original windows remaining on the structure at that time. It's a little attic window with a triangular top to it. Again, the information we received this afternoon indicated that the attic gable windows with the peak tops are currently being restored and rebuilt and will be reinstalled once completed. The bottom photograph shows the work in progress as it exists right now. And of course, I've managed to get an oak tree right across where that attic window was. What's in there now is not that cute little attic window. It's a window that I understand from what we've been informed here that will be replaced with the attic window once reinstalled. This side, they are keeping the bay window. There was a porch on the back, which is now gone. That porch had some original elements in it. Appeared a couple of original windows and an original door. That porch has been eliminated. And then if you turn to the last page, Ed, okay, the top photograph shows the essentially the east side of the building, which faces away from Lewis Road. There was a bay window here, and again, one of those little attic windows at the top. At this point in time, the bay window has been eliminated in the new construction. And you can see the two windows at the top for the second story, and there's a blank space where I understand that the restored attic window will be reinstalled. So at any rate, this essentially is a project from my point of view that has grown from when we saw it in 2022 to engulf more of the original structure at this point in time. The original structure is still recognizable as a cross gable structure, and with the restoration and replacement or reinstallation of the original attic windows and the original turn posts, it's going to retain some of its historic attributes. But the siding on the house at the time, back in 2022, was non-original. Most of the windows were non-original. The roof was obviously non-original, etc. So bottom line is this is a project that's gotten bigger, but there reportedly is going to be some saving of historic materials, and the house will retain its form. I don't think at this point that this house would meet any of the criteria for consideration as a landmark in the town, and I don't have any objection to the work that's currently underway.
Okay, any comments? Some of this is new to some of the newer board members who are not here, but the program for residing the house involves what?
It, as I understand, involves shingles.
Wood shingles?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Oh.
It'll be white.
It'll be white?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, if there's no comment, and I, received, I guess, the letter this afternoon about the updated work.
Yeah, it's so odd because we filed 2 amendments for that project, and each time we filed amendments, they asked us to file for landmarks, and we did. We filed some paperwork, and maybe it was architectural review, maybe there was some confusion there as to the updates for each time we filed those amendments.
All right. Not to carry on the discussion, but it probably should be carried on at the microphone rather than that. But you gave us the capsule, so if there's no problem, and David, did you take notice of the question of an amendment having been filed along the way as this, and somehow it got in the potpourri of the bureaucracy? So, okay, well, if there's no problem with that, then would you return
I'll return a
response to
in the next couple of
building
days.
department of
Yep.
no objections? So,
Yep.
So that'll be done within the next couple of days.
Okay, they have a work stop order on my project
Yes.
because of this.
I'm aware of that. Yes. That's why we try to get them out as quickly as possible.
I appreciate that.
839 Ocean Road. I did not prepare a written version about this, but let me just get up to the demolition prospect here. This house is dated 1922 in the assessor's database. It's located on, quote, Ocean Road, which is and was one of the grand avenues of the Bridgehampton hamlet in the 19th and early 20th century. And the location of it is, this is a 1916 map. There is no house shown on the Hyde real estate map for that year. The property is listed in the ownership of Frank Bradley. It would actually, I presume it would be Frank Bradley Jr., but I'm not sure about that. Frank Bradley Sr. was in Bridgehampton for a short period of time and then relocated to Connecticut, but his son and daughter-in-law stayed in Bridgehampton. Frank Bradley Sr. was a pretty big wheel in the construction of the New York City subway system over a number of years, and had been a noted person. In any case, Jenny Bradley, which you see as a name further up here, that was the wife of Frank Bradley Jr. And they're in the census during the 1920s as a point of locating them here. Frank Bradley, whatever, I could not find any evidence of the sale of this property. The next recorded sale, or the next recorded event that I found associated with this location, was the draft registration of a fellow named Larry Brown in 1942. So between 1922 and 1942, there's no connection of ownership in a sequence. This is the 1930 map, and it indicates a house in place. The first element of the house that we can identify in terms of its presence. Not a lot of development around. These are open farm fields. The 1938 map shows much more extensive development, as well as products of the building in the more estate characteristics of Bridgehampton. Here there is more of a cluster of other buildings and structures. It turns out in the 1940s and 1950s, Larry Brown is a chicken farmer. So I don't know if he built these things. It doesn't look like it. It looks like it was built before he ever showed up. He shows up, I said, in 1942 in a draft registration with a Bridgehampton address and the 1950 census at this address. But in 1940 census, he's still in New Jersey. So this is 1938 and the farm buildings are in place. Somebody else was farming there, but who is a mystery at this point in time. As we get on, the chicken chicken coops still exist and are now a residence on a neighboring property on what is called Silver Avenue in Bridgehampton, and I'll just try to bring that to your attention here. Okay, this is the property that we're concerned about here. This is the chicken house from the farm that in the 1980s was turned into a residence. Another little historical quirk associated with this property. This house that is associated with the chicken coop was moved from 2.5 miles away in Bridgehampton in order to be relocated there in 1976 or so. So that was a time when you could move houses without tearing down too many utility wires, and you didn't have to worry about cables and other forms of communication. So this house, this property, has undergone a lot of transformation. This originally was a storage shed here, and in about the year 2000, 2003, this was an addition put on that connects this building, which is now garage, to the house as well. So there's a lot to the house. As you can see, it's got skylights. It's got a second-story porch on it that kind of wraps around the house. So it's considerably altered. The application photographs show a lot of unusual characteristics. So it also was looked at by AKRF in 2014, and AKRF chose not to signify it in any architectural way, certainly. Here, 839 Ocean Road, when the house was drawn to its attention by the Landmarks Board, they describe it 1.5-story building, brick chimney, several large windows, second-story veranda, and their comment, the structure does not appear to retain integrity as a circa 1922 residence. However, further research could be conducted to see how close it is to original condition. But in any way, the consultant did not think it worthy of putting it in the other 1,100 recommendations that it had in the AKRF study of the town's historic resources.
And I think there are photographs at the Bridgehampton Museum in Meriwether put together of that structure. There's some young Bradley kids in the photographs and things like that.
No.
I didn't look at the agenda too closely before.
Yeah. So,
So,
well, thanks for the alert, but
yeah.
but from the viewpoint, basically, of the transformations that have taken place in the house and the original consultant's opinion about it as a historic resource, I don't see any objection to its replacement. The application does provide the design of a replacement as well, and the images provided, both interior and exterior, I thought were adequate for the application.
Do you have a photo you could just pull up at the front of the house quickly, I mean, without? Or any portion of it? It's one, yeah, there we go, with the blue trim.
Well, let's see if I can. Unfortunately, don't have a full photo. The house is currently occupied and functioning. I was look there today. We'll have photos by photos are they're not consistently oriented, so they present a problem. This certainly would not be characteristic of a period piece. The town's records show the property ownership in the 1970s as the estate of Henrietta Brown. And by tracking Henrietta Brown in the census, I got to Lawrence Brown, who in his varied career in the 30s had no occupation, had been before that an investment counselor. The family lived in New Jersey up until the 1940s. From there, the property passed to an investment banker who apparently did a lot of the renovations in the starting in the late 1980s up through 2000. And I don't know if there's any other good photographs here to illustrate. No. Otherwise, we get into the schematics. So, any comments on that? So I will then respond with no objection to the application for demolition. And make a note of the chicken coop saga as well. Okay. So unless, Lisa, did you want to?
Nope, you covered it all, just so long as you also address the new application. Just what the building department's waiting for also as well, for the demo and then the new application.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good.
Have a good evening.
21 Bishop. It's construction. And we had and Bill, you had a short or draft application here, I mean report here.
Yes.
Okay. The property presently includes a 2.5-story dwelling with an AYB of 1930, which has had multiple additions and modifications. The 1-story eastern addition was added in 1983. A pergola was added at a later date. The covered porch on the north side of the dwelling appears to be either a later addition or has been recently reconstructed. A large two-story western addition and a third-floor mezzanine and two third-floor dormers were added in 1994, along with the wraparound porch and the roof deck. The proposed work includes demolition of a porch and a second-floor terrace and construction of a two-story addition and other extensive modifications to the dwelling. The interior of the dwelling was not available for viewing at the time the exterior photographs were taken. There's also a non-historic detached garage with an AYB of 1990, for which no work is planned. Pool house with an AYB of 1990, a certificate of compliance from 1987, which appears to have been previously a detached one-story two-car garage with an AYB of 1930. No longer has any historic qualities or fabric, and no work is currently planned. There's also a pool and patio with an AYB of 1983, a certificate of compliance of 1987, and appears to have been reconstructed in 2006. As well, there's a shed, two docks, a gazebo, all apparently with no AYBs, and for which no work is currently planned, and none of them are historic. The property is not identified as an historic resource in the 2014 AKRF Southampton Historic Resources Survey, nor is it listed in the historic profiles of Eastport, Spionk-Remsenburg, and West Hampton. The subject property vicinity was originally settled in the late 1800s and early 1900s by members of the Bishop and Culver families, whose names were given to Bishop Avenue and the local area name of Culvertown. The 1873 historic map shows that Mill Road to the north and South Road to the south of the subject property were both present at that time, and that Bishop Avenue had not yet been opened. By 1902, both Bishop Avenue, noted on the map as a private road, and Baycrest Avenue, noted as a public road on the map, have been opened, and the subject property was noted to be owned by T.F. Jackson. No development of the property was apparent, but several nearby properties were occupied by Bishop and Culver families. The 1916 map continued to show no development. The property was owned at that time by William C. Atwater, who was very active in community development. The 1933 Fire District map showed the property to be owned by Ella Mae Stevens at that time, and a dwelling was now present. No record of Ella Mae Stevens was identified in the Long Island surname database or the records of the Greater West Hampton Historical Museum. The property was sold in 1958 by Iris C. Stevens, possibly a descendant of Ella Mae Stevens, to Bernard Clinton Hammond and his wife Marie Hammond, who continued to own the property until at least 1971. Also in 1971, Iris Stevens still owned the property to the north of the subject parcel. Oddly, the property has 4 certificates of occupancy for a pre-existing dwelling and detached garage from 1971, 72, 79, and 83. Usually you get one. It was kind of odd that they kept, for whatever reason, reproducing pre-existing COs. I included current elevation drawings from the extensive modifications and additions to the existing dwelling, and that include floor plans and elevations showing the 1971 and 1993 modifications to the dwelling. I also attached an H.F. Bishop land survey, originally done in 1957 and 1958, and then updated again in 1971. It shows the footprint of the dwelling in 1971, and it shows, it does not show the one-story eastern sections to the dwelling, or the two-story addition to the dwelling, or the covered porch, so they must have come later. Site plans and architect's drawings indicate that the one-story eastern addition was constructed in 1971. Additional land surveys and architect's drawings indicate that the two-story western section of the dwelling and the wraparound porch were added in 1993, along with the third-floor dormers and the mezzanine. Due to the extensive modifications and additions to the dwelling, and that the original mass is no longer recognizable and no historic fabric is remaining, this property does not meet any of the criteria for consideration as a landmark under the Towns of Southampton Code, so I recommend to the Landmarks Board that we have no objection to the construction application.
All right, thanks, very thorough and extended description. Are there any comments from colleague board members on this? So if it's the consensus of the board for no objection, Bill, would you do the honors on that? Thank you. So you will send a recommendation back within the next few days to the building department. Okay. We have an interest in North Sea Road landmark. Oh. 1063 North Sea Road.
It's just we here keeping him company.
We're together.
Oh, okay, all right, so, all right,
Psychological.
so that, okay. So that's 18 Flying Point.
Yes, yep, that's right.
Which is not on this list.
It's not on the list? Oh, no.
Well, I mean, it's not on the sign-up list, so
Oh.
that's led to the confusion, but why don't
It's
we,
all interesting anyway.
okay. Why don't we take that up as the next item for our discussion? I did send around a suggestion that because of the novelty of this application for a landmark, that we not do it in one meeting and do it in two, because there are implications by virtue of the novelty that would affect future business of the Landmarks Board. But why don't we first just generally talk about what the project is, if you would, Vicki?
Sure, sure. You have Susan's report there, because we've got some very good photographs, historical information. As Ed mentioned, this application for landmarking is for the Diamond Barn at 18 Flying Point Road. And now, this is a 1.8 acre property that's accessible from both Flying Point Road and Diamond Court. So our review is preliminary. We also expect to have some more historical information, some documentation from previous residents for our next board meeting. So we're not going to take any vote this evening. And the applicant is actually here tonight and available to answer questions if needed. So a brief background. Back in January of 2023, the Diamond Farmhouse, which is located at 14 Flying Point Road, was landmarked. Now, the Diamond Farmhouse was built around 1883 for the family of Isaac Conklin Diamond, and the Diamonds operated a dairy farm, and the farmhouse is what was relocated to what is now 12 Flying Point Road. So the original Diamond Barn was built by Isaac Conklin Diamond around 1897 as an auxiliary building for the Diamond Farmhouse. In 1915, a new barn was built, and since that time, the barn has had numerous owners, undergone significant renovations. The Diamond Barn has an AYB per the assessor's office of 1989, probably because that was the year that the barn was converted into an art studio and was granted its very first certificate of occupancy. So that's the first sort of legal record that we have. But the 1902 maps, the 1916 maps clearly show the barn and the outbuildings at 14 and 18 Flying Point Road. Charles Conklin Diamond, it's 1858 to 1921. He was called the dairyman or the general farmer, on all the census reports. And later his son, Charles Edwin, operated the farm, the property as the Clover Farm Dairy. And apparently that dairy farm prospered and was notably one of the very few to actually have electricity, which was installed in the new Diamond Barn in 1919. But increasing government regulations on dairy farming put pressure on the industry, and Charles Edwin sold the dairy operations in 1925 to Edwin Schenck. Charles Edwin later ran a potato farm. He went to Cornell University. He became very active in local community affairs, both as a businessman and as a director of the First National Bank. He also swapped land so that the Southampton bypass, Route 39A, could be built on a portion of Flying Point Road near his farm. The barn and the outbuildings at 18 Flying Point Road are visible on the aerial maps through 1984. Then in 1985, the estate of Charles Edwin Diamond, the son of Charles Conklin Diamond, subdivided the 98-acre parcel into a 4-lot subdivision, including the 7 ponds and watermill that was accessed by Diamond Court, also known as Diamond Court or Mill Farm Lane, and a few other roads. 18 Flying Point was the rear flag lot, lot number 2, with the circa 1915 Diamond Barn, and that was sold to Lynn Hefner Ferrante, who was an artist and a writer who renovated the barn and converted it into an art studio and residences, and sort of inaugurated the Diamond Barn's conversion from agricultural to cultural use. Lynn Hefner Ferrante was a professional artist. She trained at MoMA, the Pratt Institute, and the Art Institute's League, the Art Students League. She was so enthralled by the barn, in fact, that she documented her first visit in a book that she wrote in 2013 called An Untenable Fragrance of Violets. And she says, I have to read this, I thought this is beautiful. Behind the house is a barn, immense and spreading, compiled of 4 attached structures, including a separate chicken house, loose and ramshackle and quaint, and a shed at one side, and far to the left, a separate barn listing to one side, as big itself as homes I have lived in, 8,000 square feet. Ms. Ferrante still lives on the East End, and actually we are hoping, she's about 85 years old now, and we are hoping that she is going to bring, for the next meeting, the actual drawings of the barn, so we can see exactly how it was reconfigured and transposed into the art studio. But we do have, in the narrative here, we do have some photographs of the interior of the barn. Ms. Ferrante lived in the barn with her husband Joe and her mother until 1996, when she sold the property to Ronald Buckner, who was an East End photographer. He's a member of the East End Photographers Group, and his wife Carol, who was a real estate agent. The East End Photographers Group was founded in 1988 as a not-for-profit to encourage new photographers to display their work. And they're very active. And then in 2004, the sculptor and professor Hal Buckner and his partner, Dorothy Lichtenstein, the widow of famed pop artist Roy Lichtenstein, purchased the property and used it as a working art studio for themselves and for local artists and sculptors. Buckner and Lichtenstein made significant changes and additions to the property. They got a building permit in 2014 to demolish a smaller former barn cottage and then construct a 2-story artist studio. And then Dorothy created the present rock garden. It's a very large, beautiful rock garden over an old former barn structure, not the Diamond Barn, a former barn structure. And that's very visible as you enter the property. There's a photograph there, if you can zoom in on that, Ed, where you can see Dorothy Dorothy, yes, there she is in the working in the studio. The late Hal Buckner, the applicant's father, was a college professor and a sculptor. He was originally from the Northwest. He received his bachelor's and master's in painting and sculpture from University of Washington. He studied under Larry Rivers. He taught at various universities, including Long Island University and Pierce College. And he's most well known for his powder-coated aluminum sculptures of female figures. And his work was featured in multiple exhibitions from 1975 through 2022, including East End exhibitions at Guildhall, various East Hampton and New York City galleries, and most recently in 2022 at Southampton Center for the Arts. He exhibited in Palm Beach, Delray Beach, Hilton Head, Miami, Naples, Seattle, San Francisco, Berlin, Munich, Mykonos. He also was commissioned for site-specific installations all over the country and internationally. And those commissions included artworks in stainless steel and wood, cast bronze sculptures, cast aluminum sculptures, and kinetic sculptures, as well as paintings. And some of his work is actually on site. There's one of his sculptures right there at the property. And some of his sculptures actually will be shown at Art Miami this December. Dorothy Lichtenstein was co-founder of the widow of Roy Lichtenstein was the co-founder of the Roy Lichtenstein Foundation, a highly regarded philanthropist. She was born in Brooklyn, the daughter of a municipal judge. She attended Arcadia University. She met and married Roy in 1968, and they relocated to Southampton in 1970. And there she founded a creative writing and film program at Stony Brook, Southampton. And in 2017, she established the Dorothy Lichtenstein Arts Reach Fund for Art and Social Justice at the Parish Art Museum. She made significant donations of money, of art, of real estate through the Roy Lichtenstein Foundation to advance artistic endeavors and preserve works of art. The beneficiaries these are just the ones that I could find out about. Beneficiaries include the Parish Museum, over $600,000, Stony Brook University, over $1 million to the Graduate Arts Program, Ohio State University, over $6 million to endow 2 chairs, the Whitney Museum. Those donations could exceed perhaps $29 million, and they include Roy Lichtenstein's artist studio building on Washington Street in the village, previously the home of artist Margaret Varga. She also donated to the Smithsonian Institute's Archives of American Art, and then to multiple universities and museums around the world. So in conclusion, 18 Flying Point, the Diamond Barn, has been notable for its role in both farming and in cultural activities over the past 110 years, with the first 70 marked by traditional East End activity, dairy operations, potato farming, and then the last 40 years marked by distinguished art world painters and sculptors and writers whose work is exhibited in museums nationally and internationally. We believe that it's possible the Diamond Barn may meet the town requirements for designation as a landmark by virtue of possessing historic interest and value as part of the cultural, political, and social history of the East End, and it is identified with local historic personages. The property was the home of the original Diamond Farmhouse, which was relocated to 12 Flying Point and landmarked in 2023. The Diamond Barn at 18 Flying Point was built in 1915. Electricity was installed in 1919. That was very notable because at that time in the United States, less than 10% of farms actually had electricity. And that didn't change perceptibly to the 1940s. A little factoid I dug up through the Federal Reserve Bank. C. Elmer Smith, the Diamond Barn builder, is credited with building the Southampton Hospital, and he was the 4th mayor of Southampton Village. C. Edwin Smith, who was the son of C. Elmer, was the director of the First National Bank, and he was instrumental in providing housing for local citizens, particularly in the Hillcrest area, and in the creation of the Southampton Bypass, Route 39A, over a portion of Flying Point Road. And then noted sculptors, artists, writers, photographers, philanthropists established the studio at Diamond Barn, including Roy Buckner, Lynn Hefner-Ferranti, Hal Buckner, Dorothy Lichtenstein, and currently sculptor Oscar Molina, who's here with this evening. So that is a sort of a brief intro. We will have more discussion and more information for the meeting next week. As I said, Troy Buckner, the applicant, is here in the audience if you have any questions or any of the material that we presented to date.
So thank you for the presentation, and Susan for capitalizing on all your work for all the years that you've been following
It's been on
the
my
Diamond
to-do
Farm
list for a
and the
couple
Diamond
years,
property.
and
Yes.
It was a pleasure to have another visit there.
Yes.
Thank you so much, everybody.
So what's unique about this is that it's a structure. It's a structure that is no longer being used for its original purpose. There are no milk cows within
No potatoes.
50 miles.
There was a ramp, though.
Yeah, and so there's a change of use that has taken place. The context for the original building, obviously, the farm operation has been subdivided and suburbanized and character around it. And the question arises, does any of that change of use, extensive remodeling that has taken place, including perhaps even a series of windows imported from West Hampton?
Hopefully, we'll have more information on that for the next meeting. We really don't know for sure.
There are many curious elements involved in it, but that's just to characterize the renovation aspect
Right, multiple
of
renovations.
an original building. And the question is, does that jeopardize really or defeat the possibility of seeing it as a landmark to be, or for us to recommend it as a landmark to the town of Southampton? Now, just to put some things in context here, Bridgehampton, that I know of the past, was filled with barns. And one on Montauk Highway here, and Julie would have perhaps some familiarity with this because the barn once sat on Ludlow Grange. And I think it was slated for demolition. And it's a historic property in Bridgehampton, without going into its details. And it was slated for demolition, and the owner of this, at Ludlow Grange, is across the street. And the owner of this property, a developer with a historical consciousness, decided to ask for it, and it was moved across the street and turned into a residence. And exists that way today. We reviewed that building in Bridgehampton for additions that were made, for alterations to a barn as well. So something like this fits, in this case, a residence model of a transformed use and additionally renovated over the years, yet an object of some particular historic interest as well. And being a place where there are plenty of potato barns, this happens to be another one. in Bridgehampton, and it's associated with Dorothy Lichtenstein. And it was converted into a residence. Let's see if I have the pictures I should show. Maybe I can get oblique pictures to show. In the 1990s, as you can see, shed dormers were put on the roof of the barn in order to produce bedrooms and living space for the individual who lives there and basically is a caretaker of that property for the Lichtenstein estate. So,
What street's that on by chance? Does it,
it's Lumber Lane.
okay, thanks, that's all I need to know.
So that, just shows too, and if you probably didn't catch it, but when we were looking at Ocean Road before, and looking at the comments on 839 Ocean Road, look above and you see 3 barns along Ocean Road converted, a wood shingle clad barn converted as a residence and/or studio. The building has large windows, altering the character of the original structure. On conversion appears to have 2 substantially modified original structure. 488 Ocean Road, wood shingle clad barn, etc. As a residence and studio, appears to have major alterations. And the same thing for another barn, 3 former barns made into residences along Ocean Road. So the barns have some historic value, quote, as agricultural products, but they have been altered and renovated in a characteristic to differentiate them. So the question is, if we do one, is there the implication that the others basically would potentially be evaluated and qualify for scrutiny as a possible landmark?
I think the follow-on question for this application is that these were barns beautiful barns that, evolved and were modified into residences. In this case, though, you have 40 years, the last 40 years, where they're not just residences, they are working art studios, and studios for artists who are established. It's not just somebody sort of dabbling, I think I'll be, I'll take a, paint by numbers kit. I mean, these are major established, juried, exhibiting nationally and internationally. And it's had the last 40 years have been continuous in that effort.
And also, it's the Diamond Dairy Barn, and the house has been landmarked, so I think it's more
Complementary to the-
distinctive than just the generic
Right.
barn that's been altered.
That was our
and
feeling.
turned into
Right,
a
yeah.
residence.
Well, I'm raising the question that,
Yeah, well, I'm just saying,
what disqualifies for potential consideration as a landmark? And change of use is apparent here, but we've had really many kinds of change of uses. If you look at even we have had buildings like school buildings turned into civic centers, community centers, community meeting places, or turned into museums as well. So that would not seem to be a disqualifying feature of for landmarking.
and my very general comment is, and I've made it before, is like, a lot of times we'll read the application, and we'll say, you should adaptively use it on the property, don't demolish it, use it for something. And then we have people using the building, and so I think that really, in a sense, elevates it in a certain way that it's been saved. Because if it's not being used for something or anything, we're not gonna have dairy, we're not gonna have cows in there anymore. If it's not being used, then it's not going to be there. So if we're gonna preserve these in any sense, they're gonna be altered in some fashion. And I think that ought to be rewarded versus, it's a positive versus, and I understand the negative architectural, value, but positively, culturally, I see that as a plus.
It's part of it will be the cultural criteria for landmarking, not
yes.
just it's not an example of original agricultural structure in its original condition. So I think because of that cultural aspect, which I think would be really hard to duplicate to a level where it would be difficult for the board to handle all the influx of barn conversion applications, because we won't have that many world-class artists with 40 years of history behind it that we'll be able to handle that, I think.
One thing I would comment about the AKRF approach to evaluating the structures that they presented in the town of Southampton's survey of historic resources is that they weren't looking at the other dimensions for landmarking very much. They were emphasizing architectural condition and how much it might fit some ideal model given the passage of time and change that might have taken place. And that was kind of the more narrow focus, I think, for, if you look at our criteria for landmarking, it has all the elements of how it might have contributed to cultural and economic history of the town and the state, as well as the nation. So it's a broader context for looking at, what we might recommend, I think.
I think sometimes in their comments, they would say that, this is what we think. However, if anything, more research is done and anything is found, because there's no way, doing the 1100, that they would do the in-depth, and if something would be in the truck, whatever, they may not even looked at the names who owned it. They may not have even seen that. They looked at the year.
Right.
And a picture. If they couldn't see it, didn't have a picture, couldn't find their picture, they just went to the 2002 or 2003 town tax picture, and used that as an evaluation. So anyways, I think, so they did say, and Vicki did a lot, did all the cultural information, and I think what you found was really,
Well, I think it was also fascinating that this
comprehensive
particular property had so many forward-thinking people associated with it. It's rather remarkable. You've got folks who are very community-minded. You've got, the Diamonds who are busy, swapping property to make sure that we get the 39A, that we have, the community has a thoroughfare that works. You got another one who's a director of a bank who's trying to help local people get housing. Everybody's involved in something in some way or other with the community, and even the philanthropy that took place here also was connected with the community. It all involved the East End, and this is what we are here about in this board, is the East End.
I think too, and I didn't read all the articles, there's so much online, artistically, that I just sort of got a synopsis, but I think there was like an open house, an open studio type presentation a couple summers ago, where people, the studio grounds were open for people to come and visit. Was there some type of?
We had quite a few things.
Troy, you're going to have to
Why
come
don't
up to
you,
the podium.
I think, come up to the room here.
Sure.
I'm going community
You need to
benefit.
take a mic.
And just, there's a mic on the table, this chair on the left. has
Right
the,
here?
yes, has the, according to the note I got, has the best camera and angle. And
Oh, great, the best camera
Well,
angle.
introduce yourself.
Thank you. I'm Troy Buckner, owner of the property now with my brother as well. And yeah, we did have quite a few different cultural things that I think people would think would be significant there. There were, different dinner parties with, I remember one for the Massachusetts Museum of Contemporary Art where, we had quite a few different people of the arts there, Jeff Koons and different artists like that would come and Robert Rauschenberg was a guest. A lot of different people like that, and but we would have different open houses though for my dad's work. Yes, and usually just kind of more private things. But yeah, definitely a lot of different people coming and going that I was sometimes surprised that were there. So, and I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has. I'm so impressed with everything that everybody's done here. I can't thank you enough for all the. It's just fascinating for me to hear about all this, and I have been. I've been in touch with Chris Diamond, who's I think trying to get some more information, and also Mrs. Ferrante with the architectural plans. I'm meeting with her, and she was going to bring me. I couldn't believe she still had them, but she has all the original plans that she'd done in '89 to change the living structure. It's more the living part that has been altered more. I would say than the big
Right.
beautiful barn. Yeah, really. Yeah.
She
Yeah.
describes it very well in one of her, 24 feet up. I don't know. It's just,
Yeah, kind of.
it's immense, cavernous.
It's also very. It kind of looms out over Flying Point Road this time of year. Also, it's pretty visible from the street. Is one thing that I love about the idea of saving it, because it is just kind of and in the summer as well. But this time of year, you just really see it. If you come down Bowers Lane and just right there, it's you can't miss it. It holds its own back there. Yeah, so I'm just trying to there's so much history for me personally. Every step I take around there is personal for me, and but it's a lot, a lot to take on. So I appreciate you guys trying to help me in any way you can with everything. And yeah, I got off
Anybody have any
light.
questions from
No questions? I got off very light. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
so we expect to make more progress in February on this. So there's no
There's no vote tonight.
problem with Vicky and Susan and others proceeding to draft the fuller story for this project?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Love to hear if you have
Good.
more. That's great. That's good.
Okay, that I think takes care of that item. And we can go back to what we have otherwise on our agenda. And let's start with the demolition permit for 109 Montauk Highway, West Hampton. Which
pages. And I'm going to read every one of them.
which we've all had some exposure, most of us had exposure to. And Bill or Stephanie are, okay, Bill?
This is a complicated property in that there's 6 different buildings, and all 6 are slated to be demolished. The area historically was located between the settlement areas of Union Place to the west and Beaver Dam to the east. The property, which includes 2 dwellings, one of which has a hand-hewn heavy timber frame, 3 detached garages, a shed foundation, is identified in the 2014 AKRF Town of Southampton Historic Resources Survey as Historic Resource WH41. The property was not identified in the 2004 historical profiles of Eastport, Spionk, Remsenburg, and West Hampton. One other historic resource, WH40 at 102 Montauk Highway, is identified a short distance west of the subject property. The eastern part of the property is wooded, slopes downward to a drainage that connects to a small creek leading to Moriches Bay. The immediate area of the subject property was historically largely wooded or farmed, but is no longer farmed and has experienced considerable residential construction infilling in the 20th century. The Town of Southampton Community Preservation Fund plans to purchase this property. The proposed work includes demolition of all 6 structures on the property, and no new structures are proposed. This general area was originally settled by several families, including members of the Rayner, Jagger, and Fordham families, and the early maps typically show structures primarily along Montauk Highway. The 1838 U.S. Coastal Survey map shows the subject property as cleared, likely for farming, and one structure that may be on the subject property is shown. This could be the hand-hewn heavy timber frame dwelling. The 1958 map indicates the property is owned by A.J. Jagger, and at least one structure is shown on the subject property. Several buildings are noted at the approximate location of the subject property on the 1873 map, but there is no indication of property ownership shown on the map. The 1902 and 1916 maps show the property is owned still by A.J. Jagger. Several buildings are now present and may be located on the south side of the property. Multiple properties owned by the Jagger family members are nearby. In 1930, one apparent dwelling, likely the hand-hewn heavy timber frame dwelling, and a second building to the east, likely the remnant shed foundation present today, are shown on the subject property. An additional building may be present further to the east. The property is cleared, suggesting agricultural use. The 1838 aerial map, or aerial photo, shows the property is clearly used for agriculture. The hand-hewn heavy timber framed dwelling is present, as are several buildings to the southeast. None of the buildings currently on the west side of the property were present in 1938. By 1947, the second dwelling and one of the garages on the west side of the property have been constructed. A.J. Jagger, who was shown as owning the subject property on the 1858, 1902, and 1916 maps, was Andrew Jackson Jagger, the eldest son of Enoch Fanning Jagger of West Hampton and Phoebe Conklin of Southold. Based on U.S. Census information, Andrew Jackson Jagger was a farmer from at least 1850 to 1900. Andrew married Rachel Bishop of West Hampton in about 1856, and they had 4 children between 1856 and 1872, all of whom were reportedly born in West Hampton. It appears likely that the hand-hewn heavy timber frame dwelling on the subject property was used by Andrew Jackson Jagger and his family during their period of ownership and farming. Andrew and Rachel's son, Willard F. Jagger, was reported in census records to live in their home in 1880 and to be a florist farmer adjacent to his father, Andrew, in the 1900 and 1910. By 1930 and 1938, the aerial photos show several greenhouses on the property to the south of the subject property, and the 1902 and 1916 maps also suggest the presence of greenhouses in this area. Andrew's father, Enoch Fanning Jagger, was one of several sons of Enoch Jagger of West Hampton and Mahiable Fanning of Southampton. They were married in Southampton in 1788 and lived in West Hampton. Based on the birthplaces of all of their children, Enoch Jagger was in turn one of the many children of Stephen Jagger, who came from Southampton and acquired a large amount of land in the West Hampton area. Stephen settled at what is now 112 Montauk Highway, just to the west of the subject property. Stephen Jagger's home, known as the Jagger House, was built about 1748 and was added to the New York State and National Registers of Historic Places in 1978. The house remained present until at least 1984, but burned not long after, with the remnants subsequently removed. Stephen Jagger's second wife was Miriam Wicks of Comac, and their first son was Enoch Jagger. Thus, Andrew Jackson Jagger was the great-grandson of the original settler of West Hampton and one of the many Jagger families who initially developed the area in the subject property vicinity. Census information from 1920, 1930, and 1940 indicates that John, Michael, Catherine, Nellie, and Sophie Stacknick, who were immigrants from Poland, were living on the subject property during those years and were involved in the duck farming business. At least a portion of the property appears to have passed into John Stacknick's ownership in 1929. John Stacknick sold the property to G. Zuck in 1948. Thereafter, the property was owned by members of the Zuck, Sheehan, and Moskowitz family. The 2014 AKRF Town of Southampton Historic Survey states that the property noted as WH41 is an early vernacular house, likely dating to the first quarter of the 19th century. This single-story side gable house has a high knee wall and a central brick chimney. The three-bay facade includes two windows containing 2/1 double-hung sash, apparent turn-of-the-century replacements, and a door in the end bay, which is accessed via a small shed-roofed entry porch, also a likely early 20th century addition. While the house has been altered with asbestos shingle siding and the circa 1900 updates noted, it retains its early vernacular form and fenestration pattern. No house appears to be shown in the precise location on the 1916 map, though the A.J. Jagger property includes the site of the house and several buildings are shown on the property. This property appears landmark eligible under town criteria A and C. Photographs were taken January 3rd, 2025 by the Landmarks Board. The interior of the one-story dwelling on the property was not available for viewing, so no interior photos could be taken of that building. I did include a key map in the photographs in order to try and clarify which buildings I was discussing, and then I numbered each one 1 through 6 so that they could be followed, because it was quite an undertaking to get them all in there. In summary, the subject property appears to have been initially developed with the timber frame dwelling in the early 1800s, was owned and farmed by Andrew Jackson Jagger, a descendant of Stephen Jagger, an original settler of the area, and his family from the mid-1800s to early 1900s. From the early to mid-1900s, the property was occupied by members of the Stacknick family, who were Polish immigrants involved in duck farming. Buildings associated with both families remain present on site, although in deteriorated conditions. If the buildings were not in deteriorated condition, this property may have met one or more of the criteria for consideration as a landmark. The first structure, which I labeled number 1, is the one-story house, has an AYB of 1938. The interior was not accessible. Its condition inside is unknown. The exterior is in minor disrepair, and it appears that it could be repaired and subsequently used. The roofing will be failing soon, and water will be entering the building if it's not replaced. The covered front porch is in very poor condition. The siding is asbestos shingles. The rear stoop is in very poor condition. Having gone into the basement, we did see rough sawn floor framing as we were down there. The Landmarks Board should have no objection to the removal of this structure, as no exterior historic fabric is remaining, and the buildings do not appear to retain any historic significance. The oil tank, the asbestos pipe insulation, and the asbestos siding should all be properly removed and disposed of. The second building is a detached garage behind that house, has an AYB of 1938. The original garage exterior and interior are in disrepair, but appear that they could be repaired and subsequently used. The roofing will be completely failing very soon, and water will be entering the structure if it's not replaced. The lean-to addition on the south side appears in very poor condition and should be removed. It also has asphalt shingle, roofing shingle siding on both of those garages. They have
The table of my concrete block garage
has that.
also.
Does it? Yeah. The Landmarks Board should have no objection to the removal of this structure, as no exterior historic fabric is remaining and the building does not appear to retain any historic significance. The two cesspools, the two gas tanks that were inside one of the garages, and the asbestos siding should all be properly removed and disposed of. The structure behind that garage, called number 3, also a detached garage, also has an AYB of 1938. The original garage exterior and interior are in disrepair, but appear that they could be repaired and subsequently used. The roofing will be completely failing very soon, and water will be entering the structure if it's not replaced. The overhead door is in disrepair and needs to be replaced. The garage is made up of a combination of older, reclaimed, and new framing members. Some of the sheathing on the side walls was only long enough to reach from stud to stud, which looked like they were about 2 feet on center. They doubled the studs so that there would be enough wall there to attach the boards to them. Kind of a hodgepodge of a building. The Landmarks Board should have no objection to the removal of this structure, as no exterior historic fabric is remaining and the building does not appear to retain any historic significance. The important building, structure number 4, the 1.5-story house with the AYB of 1820. The interior finishes of this structure have been completely removed, and the hand-hewn heavy timber frame is entirely visible inside the house. The frame is in somewhat serviceable condition and could be repaired or salvaged or repurposed. The roof has partially collapsed on the south side, and the subflooring beneath this roof area has been removed, exposing the small round cellar area. The second floor framing and the subflooring has also been partially removed. The lean-to addition on the south side appears to be in very poor condition, and the roof has collapsed, so it should be removed. The siding on this building is asbestos shingles. The covered porch on the north side is in very poor condition. The porch floor framing and floor were previously reconstructed and are in very poor condition again. The siding and sheathing have been removed from the wall between the 1.5-story dwelling and the lean-to addition, exposing that to the weather. Behind this asbestos siding are deteriorated wood shingles above the brick foundation wall. A clay drain pipe is being used as a flue pipe. There's an original brick chimney, fireplace, with an extensively corbelled brick chimney. In the photo of at the upper photo there, they couldn't make up their mind where that chimney was going. It goes in every direction. And you'll see on the lower picture, I noted 2 of the thimbles in it. It's not that big of a chimney. It has the fireplace and 4 thimbles going into the same chimney. The roofing lath is a very wide plank live edge board. The flooring is wide tongue and groove boards. Corner framing has diagonal bracing. The poured concrete stairs are in a brick areaway. A cellar with a curved brick wall is beneath a small portion of the house. We noticed slashes were used to identify the beams, probably from when they originally did the construction. The electrical panel is in very poor condition. Although the building has historic significance, the Landmarks Board should not object to the removal of this structure, as no exterior historic fabric is remaining and the structure is in poor condition. The oil tank, the well, the cesspools, and the asbestos siding should all be properly removed and disposed of. I felt that the Landmarks Board should stress that the hand-hewn heavy timber frame should be salvaged and repurposed in some way. The 5th building, number 5, with an AYB of 1938, was a shed. In the upper photo, you can see in 2014, they were rebuilding the shed. We had a tornado that went through there?
Yes, tornado.
few years ago, and probably at that time, it huffed and puffed and blew that building down. The walls are still laying on the ground there. There is a foundation, and it has a slate floor set in concrete. So the wood frame portion of that structure is completely collapsed and only the foundation remains. The Landmarks Board should have no objection to the removal of this structure as it really no longer exists. The sixth structure, a detached garage with an AYB of 1900. The original garage exterior and interior are in very poor condition, and it appears that repairing the structure would be a massive undertaking due to the south roof collapsing and the floor beneath it collapsing. The lean-to addition on the south side appears to be in very poor condition, and the roof has collapsed, so it should be removed. It has a very interesting mock stone veneer on the foundation that I feel was not original and appeared later. It sticks out several inches beyond the siding. I'm not quite sure what that was meant to be. The Landmarks Board should have no objection to the removal of this structure, as it is in very poor condition and little exterior historic fabric is remaining. The barn doors might be salvaged and repurposed. Yeah, you can see in that lower picture, there's not much left of the roof on the lean-to or the main portion of that garage.
Particularly the house, is demolition by neglect, I assume. I mean, just
It
it
seems to
hasn't
have-
been lived in. I mean, not necessarily by the current owners, but
Yeah. A while back, somebody purchased it and they were doing work there, and I don't think they had permits for things, and I don't think that
okay.
they were stopped. Then it seemed to change hands a couple of times.
I think at one time it had bank ownership.
Yes.
so
Yes.
So that would indicate possibly a foreclosure
Yeah.
of perhaps the work that was being done. Just my casual view of aerial imagery showed that it's really been not any activity at this site since 2008. And that was the time of the bank ownership coming into play.
Right. There is no actual driveway into the property. Everything is just overgrown with tall grass and other small trees just coming up out of it. And, yeah, it doesn't look like anybody's really maintained anything there for quite a while.
it's just sad looking at the one picture to what it is.
Yes, that one
Today.
photo, yep, from the GIS, yes.
But observing all that old timber in the frame
Yes.
kind of rips your heart out.
Yeah, it had a
Yeah.
handsome frame.
Yeah.
At least the gable end section, you got the picture of it.
Yeah.
Nice looking.
But somebody's definitely been inside and pulled up the subflooring and pulled out a lot of the joists for the second floor. For whatever reason, they peeled the sheathing off the back wall and exposed it to where the lean-to roof had collapsed, so now weather's getting in there. They'd removed some of the first floor subfloor underneath where there was the hole in the roof. Again, not sure quite why.
Yeah, some of those were cut out like rectangles in the floor.
Yes.
Like, almost like a duck would go through them or something.
Right. And there is a nice stairs going up with a handrail on it, with a little sweep as it gets to the top, nice curve as it turns around and heads back along the balcony. Yeah, and there's another stairs in there just laying on the floor. I couldn't quite figure out where that came from or why it was there.
Well, very thorough, and the structural analysis is also very complete. So any comments? It's something yet of a mystery as to its ultimate origin, in the sense that, was it continuously there or not? My sense it was moved there in the 1920s or so, given to look at the brick at the cellar entrance and the concrete stairway that was put in there, but at the moment, that's only a guess in the absence of real information. The 20th century, early 20th century owner, Willard Jagger,
Yeah, that was the Andrew Jackson Jagger's son.
Right. He's the one who built all the greenhouses on the
To the south.
the south end of the old agricultural property that was there. But he was also involved in some real estate ownership elsewhere in this community, and it seemed to me possible that in the absence of selling something but had an old house on it, that he might have captured it and relocated it at a point, and then it was sold for the duck farming Stachniks, who the Stachniks sold it to the Zooks. They were related. It was an in-law that they were selling to. I forget the husband or the wife-in-law. And then David reports that he had talked to a gentleman who had once lived there, John Zook, whose ownership shows up on the property. And he was a major program director for NASA out in California for many years, ahead of a couple major programs there. And that probably then was sold to the more modern ownership of Sheehan and others that you mentioned.
He told me that he grew up in that house and attended West Hampton Beach schools. I think he was much older than me, maybe a little bit older. Probably graduated in the 60s.
Yeah.
Ed, did you say they grew orchids for export to the city? No, not chrysanthemums, some kind
Carnations.
of flowers. Huh?
Carnations.
Was what?
Carnations.
Yes.
The kind of thing you put in your lapel.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, carnation, I know.
Yeah.
I think that's what must have been what it was.
He was regarded as the major grower for the New York markets of carnations with his greenhouses. Among other things, apparently made him very prosperous. And he also had another agricultural exposure, if you will. He spent some time in Bermuda and basically helped them cultivate the right types of potatoes that would grow in Bermuda. So he had some agricultural expertise, whether acquired or by experience, acquired by education or experiences. I don't know, but he did have a fair amount of agricultural success.
How do you suppose that term duck farming came up? I've heard of chinchilla ranching back when they used to do that ads on TV late at night for people to raise chinchillas, I suppose, for fur coats. But farming seems like a funny thing to say about ducks, because you're not growing them out of the ground.
Some farms called them duck ranches.
Yes.
But most of them were called duck farms.
Oh, that sounds
I've always wondered that too.
Yeah.
And how would you explain solar farms or wind farms?
Touche.
So, okay. So, based on that, since you have some recommendations to make, would you do the report and recommendations to them as well? All right. Thank you, Bill. So,
Sorry.
11, let's see, what, see, we did Basket Lane?
We have not
We
done
didn't
Basket
do
Neck
Basket
Lane now.
Lane, okay. So that is another demolition.
Yeah, I think we did this as a group report, so I'll start with history and then pass it off to Bill and Larry for the photos, etc. This is a house that was built in 1921 by Gilbert C. Halstead of Jr., who lived in Brooklyn. His father lived in West Hampton Beach, and Gilbert Halstead Jr. was marrying the daughter of Henry Royce, Marjorie Royce. And he had this house built for her in 1921 as a wedding present. Or so the story goes from Meg Winslow, and it's documented or backed up by several little newspaper articles I was able to find in the County Review. The house was built by Charles Terry of Remsenburg, and Earl Bishop, once one of the many bishops of West Hampton, did the masonry work. And this was for both the house and for the garage. The Halsteads, I remember the house that they used to have down on Fish Creek. They lived in this house for a number of years, and then they eventually built a larger house nearby on Fish Creek. They would come out to this house in summertime, use it as a summer home. After they were done with this house, it was sold to Helen Beinecke, who didn't live in the house, but she used it as a rental and for people to stay in, etc. Helen Beinecke apparently eventually sold it to James Normile, who now lives in West Hampton, and he sold it to the Winslows in 1995. The house has been modified a bit. It's had a few additions on it. It's had the new cellar put in, which was done before the Winslows owned it. At any rate, that's essentially the story of the history of this house. It was one of several that were built in that area of Basket Neck Lane at the time as summer cottages for people to live in. And we've previously reviewed one of these at the end of Nickerson Lane, which this is the side street here is Nickerson Lane. And that one unfortunately was torn down. But there are several other similar homes in the immediate vicinity that were built as these summer cottages. So with that, I'll turn it over to you guys to talk about the structure.
Yeah, anything you want to fire away on? I think it's that the house is in amazingly good condition. That and the garages, both of them were particularly well maintained. There's hardly any peeling on the shingles. There's what is like 10-inch exposure to weather on the wall shingles. They're very smooth and 6/6 windows for the most part, and they all have been kept in good working order for double hung windows with their ropes and weights. And the house is sweet. I should be in the salvage business. Let them move the darn thing. The house and the garage, it's never profitable to move a garage unless it's a nice barn. But this structure, because of the linear nature of it, be easy to move. It's a sweet house because it's had so little wear on it. Floors show no wear inside other than light and dark spots where rugs used to sit. But a delightful house. Do you remember what the name of those windows when you lay them on the side? It's in Big House, Little House, Outhouse Barn, that book?
Yeah.
There was a term for when you add an addition on the end of the house and put the window at the same slope as the roof.
Something about witches, I thought.
Huh?
I thought it was something about witches.
Yeah, it could be. It's something with that sort of a funny name to it. But anyway, it has brand new, or relatively almost brand new, appear to be hardwood blinds or shutters. And they're functional hardware. Very nice, because I would call it a Dutch revival if I had to put a term on it, but it has a Dutch resembling front, at least some of the elements. Has a really sweet main front entry that's been protected by the porch overhang since it was put in. So it only has about 2 or 3 coats of paint on it. and it's real ornate. Got nice leaded glass. It's true leaded glass on the two side lights, and some little engaged columns, pairs of them on each side, and 6/6 a door, and has from the 20s. There was a period when there was Kenneth Lynch and Son up in Connecticut made a bunch of this hardware, and it was technically blacksmith made, but it wasn't quite. It gotten more industrialized, but there's some very nice Dutch hinges that are reproduction hinges, but nobody has made those in a million years. And I think that probably came from Lynch. And then there's strap hinges on the door going out on the screen porch, and a Suffolk thumb latch. They're nice. I contacted it's not. I guess it's not the owner. Who's that?
Is it the builder?
The developer. And anyway, he's the one that opened up the door to let us in, and he said they would save that hardware and stuff. I was going to see if there's someone who'd like to have that front door, and it's easy enough to remove. But at any rate, it has very nice. All the exterior floors on the porches and everything on the garage and the main house have been replaced with synthetic floorboards. They have a nice screen porch on one end. The floor's perfectly intact. And it's got on the east end, it's got sort of an ungainly looking chimney standing sort of by itself going. So there you can see it to the left of that tree right there. And I don't know what's allowed that to stand upright for so long. It looks like an accident waiting to happen. Anyway, that's a derelict flue chimney, and it goes to the basement, but the opening has been plugged a long time ago. And there's dormers, has nice little dormers, except on the west addition, it doesn't have any dormers. It occurs to me that the west addition was added a bit later than the main house and the east projection. And there you can see the garage. It's has these nice little 4-light windows. I had initially thought that maybe where that little stoop is might have been set up to be a single horse stall at the west end of the garage, and then there's two bays on the east that are for automobiles, and they're done in typical fashion as was done with auto garages at the time, and even before, back to buggies, horse and buggies. They love putting in floors that slope to a center drain, and I've seen, it seems like they may have, when a vehicle's wet, it drains all that stuff down at the drain. But otherwise, if you want to wash these vehicles indoors, you can do that, and the water drains away. So anyway, it's both this. The roof is pretty much shot, but it's not leaking. It's asphalt shingles, and that's the basement of the part that I think may be a later addition, because they put a full basement under it, and it looks like it was built with that basement. And you get over to the other side, it has a round brick basement with the usual shelf in it, which we see a lot. And you see the steel columns and stuff. We asked them for that door right there. That's a little bake oven door, but it's not an antique. It wasn't like they found it somewhere. So that's what makes me think that a lot of these pieces were reproduction that made like before the Depression. I asked them to save us that, and what they never do is save the pintles, the things that act as hinges that go into the masonry, because they're kind of a pain to get out. But so we'll see if we get those. There's the Suffolk latch, and you're right. And that one is an unusual. That door, that you can't quite see it. You look at that real close, you'll see that door latch is upside down, and it has kind of a funky quality to it. But it has, on the other side, it has very nice Dutch influenced strap hinges they're not on pintles, they're actual hinges. And it's a 6-panel door. Got funny little dormers. They look nice on the house, but you walk up to them, they're quite small to look out of, and they're located high. You know, the sills, the stool would be about chest height on those. Has a kitchen that's, you know, typical sort of modern kitchen, has a Viking stovetop range, it's okay. And has a funny porch that's on the gable end of it, comes out about 4 feet, and nothing wrong with the little porch, except it doesn't really have a rhyme or reason for being there. Doesn't have a door going out onto it, and it has a projection underneath it that it looks like. What did you think that was, Stephanie? You thought
Oh, the backside of the
ovens?
oven, the wall ovens.
that's. And then we asked them to save a newel post upstairs at the top of the stairs. So there it is, and that was somebody's flight of fancy. It looks to be a coconut. That round thing looks like it's a sanded and carved coconut.
Yeah, I spoke to Meg Winslow about it. It's actually a ceramic object that her husband, Bill Winslow, acquired in Santa Fe. And they had it made into the top of the newel post.
Yeah, it was very light when you picked it up.
Yeah.
You pick the thing up and it comes out of the newel, and it's mounted on an inch thick piece of looks like plexiglass or lucite, and then there's an oval plaque underneath it, and as a salute to somebody's handiwork.
Yeah, that was Gary Tuttle, who is the builder for this wing and renovation of the house.
Yeah.
And Bill Winslow had that plaque made for him, and he invited Gary and his wife Priscilla over for dinner. And after dinner, he says, "I got one more thing I have to have you do." And he took him upstairs and showed him the plaque, and he had him screw the plaque into the newel post.
It's fun. It was up, you know. So if you could say a house is sort of loved by this house, seems to have had a pleasant run since 1921 or 20, and has been in a way lovingly maintained. If you can say that about a house,
Has been.
And very nice. There's that sloping window, and anyway, it's too bad it can't be moved. It makes someone a very nice home, but it's easy enough to move, but there's no cheap land. You know, it's not. You end up dragging it down. I would send it to Riverhead. That'd teach them. Okay, that's about all I got on it.
So on a response and a recommendation on this, is there a sentiment that has been?
Yeah, it doesn't have any particular historic significance. I mean, it was just another one of the summer colony homes on Basket Neck Lane. And while we knew some of the people who lived there, they weren't of any terribly significant note in the community. You know, and it's not particularly old. So I don't think it would meet criteria to be considered a landmark in the town. So it's we have asked for certain things that be salvaged during demolition, and one of the things that we asked for was on the front, next to the front door, was a carved slate sign that said Winslow. It was the name of the most recent owners, and rather than put it in a dumpster, they allowed us to remove that sign.
Come over and get it.
Yeah, and the Winslows were very happy. They had totally forgotten about the sign on the front of their house, and I'm going to mail it to them, and they'll be very happy to have it. So, I don't see that we can object to this demolition. It's just a shame for a perfectly serviceable, nice, well-maintained home to be demolished.
So for a response, it would be, we find no basis to object to the demolition.
Yes.
Okay. Is there? consensus that that is the appropriate thing? Okay, so it is. And Stephanie, would you?
I'll take care of the response.
Okay, thank you. 55, construction, 55 Dale Avenue, Riverside, was screened for review by Stephanie and Tim and myself, and found not to be significant. The construction application for 1372 Flanders Road, Tim has a oral summary to give us about it.
Right. So this is the circa 1825 Reverend Nathaniel Fanning Homestead, which is a town of Southampton landmark. The construction application was for pre-existing work done to put the indoor bathrooms in, which had not been permitted. This work had already been done at the time when the house was landmarked. So even if it did require a COA, it would have been incorporated in the landmarking, and it's an interior feature which wouldn't have been. We did receive a COA application, and it seemed that when it was filled out, they answered no to 2 of the 3 questions, and if you answer no to 1 of the questions, you're not supposed to submit the COA. So I don't think it meets the criteria for needing one. So I think we probably could have passed, but because the COA was submitted, we just needed a
Just
little bit more
to
time to
acknowledge it.
read the fine print on the paperwork.
Yes, no. Okay, so it's,
So I can send a response of no objection.
right, okay, that's good. And also just make a note that there was a reference to a COA which we found not applicable. Okay, 10 and 12 Red Creek Road is a referral by the planning board. This should all be basically a little familiar to you because May 2024 we reviewed this property. If you remember, it was the one with half of the side removed on a very old house on Red Creek Road, and it exposed some of the interior framing, but it was an application for demolition, believed to be built by Ellis Squires Jr., son of the Ellis Squires, whose house is preserved nearby as a landmark structure owned by the town of Southampton. And with the demolition of that house, the property next door is vacant, a wooded vacant area, and this is basically changing the lot line and mapping for these 2 parcels to allow 2 houses, 2 new houses obviously, to come into being. We, having had our say on the demolition of the original house, and there's no other structure involved here, I don't see that there's anything that we should remark on, and the public hearing is on Thursday, so if there's no problem, I will just send back that we find no issue with the subdivision of this property, which once had a very old structure that we did review, and just make a note of that for that. So, okay, it's no problem there. Okay, 4 Beaver Dam Road, West Hampton, is a landmark application, and this is a CPF property, okay, since 2020?
2020, I believe, yeah.
2020, okay. I was unsure of the date that's involved. So a write-up has been prepared. Do you want to, or who's going to do a review?
Do it. I'll do it. Do you want me at the podium?
Well, you can sit here where the board, and it's easier for
Listen,
camera work.
You've all seen the report?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so this property was purchased by the town with CPF fund in 2020. At first, it was going to be more of a historic resource view-only type of structure. And it's come more to light where we can actually possibly use the land, its access to the water, with the steward, which I'll get into. So in order to do that, and basically what this would be is just a stabilization, safety, access to the building, and then it could stand for another 100 so years. So that's kind of where we're at right now. So the structure is going to look pretty much exactly as it is. Then we'll have a new roof will be put on. But the siding and everything will be, we're going to keep as much of it as possible. It will be raised slightly. I think you saw the plans in there. So just a little history. So this is the what is known as the Rayner Fish House. It's located at 4 Beaver Dam Road in West Hampton. It is just to the north of a town-owned marina. It's on 0.02 acres of land along Beaver Dam Creek, and it's been identified as a historic resource and is a contributing structure in the town's maritime history. It was not included in the AKRF in 2014 because they thought the original building, which had been damaged during the hurricane of 1938, was gone. But this was this building was built to replace the 1938, so it was built around 1939. The property was evaluated in the town of Southampton's resource, which I just mentioned. The potential, so, although not particularly noteworthy architecturally, possesses characters that are historically significant. This report has been prepared to document the property's history in support of town landmarking. The barn-like structure on Beaver Dam Creek was built in 1939 by William Fletcher Rayner to replace a former 19th century fish house that was destroyed during the hurricane of 38. Constructed partially over the and braced for support in severe weather, the fish house was used to store and repair fishing gear and provide a shelter for the local fishermen to work and socialize, a way of life in Southampton town that is worthy of preserving for future generations. The builder, William Fletcher Rayner, born in 1875, was best known as Fletch, was a sturgeon fisherman, an engineer, a chauffeur, and for many years, from 1930 until his death in 1959, a town trustee. I also, in the federal census for 1930, he's listed his occupation as a plumber. So he was a man of many talents. So Fletch descends from a long line of Rayners who have lived on Beaver Dam Creek since the mid-1700s. The first such is Jonathan Rayner, born in 1681 and died in 1741, who settled in what is now West Hampton Beach as early as 1707, acquiring lands along Appacuck Creek, which is we now know as Beaver Dam Creek, in 1712, when Southampton divided the 1666 topping purchase meadow lots, including Spionk Neck, Tanner's Neck, and Appacuck Neck. Appacuck Neck is Algonquin for the flaggy land for the abundance of cattail reeds and flags used to weave mats and covered wigwams. Jonathan's son Nathan, who was born in 1716, was reportedly the first Englishman to settle Appacuck Neck along the creek in 1741. Just a little more history about the background of the area. So on April 1st, 1746, Southampton town gave permission for the widow Abigail Howell to use and improve the stream called Beaver Dam with all its necessary conveniences for a mill and the making of a dam for 12 years to come, and then return it to the town. Super interesting that they were giving a woman in the 1700s the right to build a mill and dam up the creek so this is to the north across Montauk Highway, but a very interesting point of fact in town history. She was I did a little research on her. She was married to a Jonathan Howell. There's just not enough information to determine which Jonathan. We do know obviously she was a widow by 1746, but not a lot of information on her, but just very interesting for the area. So with the construction of the grist mill completed in 1748 at the western end of Mill Road, here the colonial settlement of Beaver Dam prospered. With the growth in population, a school, stagecoach stop, blacksmith shop, and a meeting house were established. I don't know where we are on here, but the 1838 map, coastal survey map, shows the area which I was just mentioning, which is in blue, and then the green area, which is the area where the fish house now stands, and probably the Rayner house is on the map. I circled it in red. Down a long driveway. That's probably where the Rayner homestead was, the 18th century homestead.
Yeah, that's which is no longer in existence.
Right. Yeah. So the Rayner family continued to fish the waters and farm the land of Appaquack Neck, providing sustenance for themselves and the local community over the next century. With the advent of the Long Island Railroad's Montauk branch in the late 1860s, greater commercial fishing opportunities came with easier access to the burgeoning New York City markets for fish via rail. So they fresh right out of the creeks and bays right into barrels and on the next train west into the city. So there's a photograph here of Fletcher's father, William Clark Rayner, who was born in 1839, sailing up the creek with supplies from the beach. The earlier fish house is at the center, circa 1900. So this is the fish house, the predecessor that was destroyed during the hurricane of 1938. So so the first fish house was built, they believe, about the 1860s and was used to support several commercial fisheries, according to the Rayner Fish House Legacy of a Fishing Family's History on Beaver Dam Creek by the Greater West Hampton Beach Historical Museum. And thank you, Stephanie, for all the work that you've done on this particular structure and the family. At that time, sturgeon fishing became popular in the late 1800s and was practiced from the beach using gill nets during May and June, and the nets were stored in the fish house during the rest of the year. When sturgeon fishing declined in the early 1900s, fishing for cod using scroll lines, trawls, and gill nets became popular, with both from the beach and on Moriches Bay. And also, just a little newspaper clipping that I found in the Southside Signal, where William C. Rayner, who was seen in this photograph in his boat, caught 700 pounds of bass in the ocean on one Saturday. So, and I did find many other clippings of 1,300 striped bass were caught in 1917 by Fletch Rayner. So they were out on the water quite a bit, and this was their livelihood. Subsidized by all these other things that he did, being a plumber in 1930. The 1916 map shows the location of William Clark Rayner's buildings and fish house, and then we have, of course, the hurricane of 1938 devastated the greater West Hampton area, and the loss of life was horrific, with many of the casualties in the town coming from the West Hampton area. The storm destroyed infrastructure in many buildings along the coast, including the original Rayner Fish House. After massive cleanup, a new one was built with stronger bracing for harsher weather and severe storms. So this is the first photograph there is of the newest, the newly built Rayner Fish House, around 1939, 1940, with a small dock and a boat slip located on the south side. And as I had mentioned, it's just a newspaper re-election campaign advertisement. And you can see William Fletcher Rayner. As a trustee, he had, as I mentioned earlier, he had been a trustee, town trustee since 1930. We believe that the next photograph is a picture of the fish house, probably in the 1950s. This barn, sliding kind of barn door that's behind those nets, that is not in existence anymore. It's just a doorway. So fish houses. So traditionally, fish houses were basic utilitarian structures located in protected areas along the shore, convenient to fishing grounds, and were built out onto the water with a dock for easy access by boat. They served as base of small-scale fishing operations for a community of fishermen, sometimes outfitted with a potbelly stove. There is evidence inside the structure of where a potbelly stove had sat, and then there is a hole on the exterior where the pipe flue would have come through.
You ever see diagonal braces used on the outside? Like, I think the technical term would be a cant post, sloping.
Just to hold it.
Yeah, here's the walls going straight up, and then they'll have these angle posts coming in. I don't know at what sort of an angle, but enough that they look like they're for buttressing against high wind.
Mm-hmm.
Mystic Seaport has one that's when it was the New York Yacht Club's clubhouse, and it's set on the water. And I've seen several others done that way that were small utilitarian fishing structures.
Right.
And I assume it was just for wind.
Yeah, that's what the braces were for here.
What?
Yeah.
That's what the braces were for on this particular structure.
Yeah.
It's for wind protection.
And then do you ever see cypress used on the siding? Seems like behind the big duck, that barn back there, I believe it looks like it's cypress.
Yeah, I'm not sure of the.
I don't even know where I guess you'd get cypress at a lumber yard. It didn't grow around here.
I would seriously doubt that cypress was used here.
Yeah,
Probably whatever they salvaged after the 38 hurricane. There was a lot of salvage and a
Floated in.
lot of reuse of lumber.
Yeah.
With a number of
That's for
family
sure.
things that were built from that wood.
So the house provided a space for the fishermen while they worked preparing gear and bait for the next day, and relaxed atmosphere for swapping fish stories, news and gossip of the day. Fish houses were ramshackle in appearance, as we just were mentioning, functioning only as working sites year round. They range from simple shacks to larger peaked roof structures with windows in the gabled ends. Like the 14 by 20 foot Rainer Fish House, most were made of unpainted rough-hewn planks, usually scavenged material and most likely washed up debris. Mm-hmm. After the hurricane, permanent inlets in the Atlantic Ocean were open forever, changing the salinity of the bays and creeks. Fish species changed and the local baymen adapted. And just a year later, under the heading of Suffolk Fishing Industry equals Farming in Income in the County Review, September 14th, 1939 issue, according to John W. Matthews, Executive Secretary of the Mid-Atlantic Fisheries Association, said the products of Suffolk County's extensive fisheries plus the returns of the growing sport fishing industry are equivalent in value to the county's agricultural income. So they were comparing it to the potatoes.
Oh.
And then that was just as much money was being brought in from the water. So clamming and fishing for alewives, bluefish, eels, flounder, and striped bass continued to prosper in the 1940s and the early 50s. It was a vital part of the local economy. By the late 1950s, however, commercial fishing had declined, but the fish house maintained its usefulness to the family and with a focus on crabbing, boat storage, and boat building. So there's a photograph here. This is a 1947 aerial, and the fish house there circled in yellow. So in 1958, Fletch sold the property to his son, Charles Marvin Rayner, who not only took over the fish house operations, but filled his father's seat as a town trustee. By 2014, all fishing operations had ceased, and Marvin sold the property to the town in 2020 for preservation. So I had mentioned to the south is a town-owned marina, but also just to the north of this little 0.2 acres, the town also owns the piece along South Road. That piece, when the father sold, Marvin got the fish house property and his sister got the northern property in 1958 when the father passed on. So currently the CPF restoration efforts will be limited to stabilization of the building, ensuring its safety and accessibility, repairing the roof, and replacing the surrounding docks. We will be working with the Murch's Bay Project as a potential steward of the fish house and property. The Murch's Bay Project will use the space at Beaver Dam Creek for environmental and educational purposes and is a historical resource to bring awareness to the local community about our waterways, our sea life, our plant life, fouling, as it greatly improves the quality of life in and around the bay.
Yay.
So, yeah, so we have pictures of the structure.
Where is
West-
this located? I don't think I've ever seen
So
that.
if you're heading west on South Road, and right as you go over
Oh, that's right.
Beaver Dam,
That's
it's right
what
on
I thought
your-
it was. Okay.
right on
Yeah,
your-
yeah, I've
the
seen it.
left-hand side
Yeah.
there.
It's not easily familiar, recognizable as you go on.
What is?
Country
Oh,
road.
you
You
can
can
see
see
it.
it right
You
from
can
the
see
road.
You
it.
can see
Yes,
it right
I've
on the
seen
bridge.
it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So these are the west and east elevation with the creek docks. So those docks will all be repaired and safe. It will be elevated slightly. There will be a ramp coming up on the right side or the south side of the building, and a build out from the front elevation, which is the west elevation, for accessibility. So the north elevated, some mismatched windows. The south elevation, I wish I could have gotten a little bit better shot, but I wasn't about to dangle myself out there on the crane, so best as I could do. And so this would be the access here on the south side. There's a, kind of a boat ramp to get in. So the Merchants Bay project will be using those for all sorts of educational experiences for children in the water. So this is a view right from the bridge, and you can see it when you're driving by in a car, which is nice that the rail on the bridge is low enough that you can really get a really beautiful look at this building. And I thought it was just too sweet. It has the high tide mark plaque on the front, the west elevation, so we can see where Sandy came in 2012.
The marker sign that's shown, is that visible to pedestrians?
The bottom structure, yeah, that's right on the sidewalk.
Okay.
So as you're walking, which many people are walking, jogging, biking along South Road, we kind of angled it so that you're looking at the fish house right from the road property, and that was done for the Rayner family.
Yep.
And I had just kind of taken a present day picture and I superimposed the 1940 black and white. You can see on the sign, the old photograph is on the right hand side, so you're kind of getting an idea of what you would have been looking at the time it was built. And so these are some of the interior structures. This would probably be better answered things by more seasoned people with the architectural elements, but this will stay pretty much as you see it. In the Merchants Bay project, they know they can't touch it. There was talk of paint, and they will not be painting.
Yeah.
Inside or outside.
It looks like some work has already been done. A bunch of those 2x4s look to be
Yeah, I
fairly
think
new.
it's possible when they first purchased it, they had somebody go in and just shore it up a little bit, CPF.
Yeah, that was
Or
not-
they were there prior. This
they weren't.
They weren't. Okay, so then that might have been done by Greg.
Yeah.
CPF.
Yeah. No, it's,
That seems like that could be an interesting class, little excursion for kids in elementary school. The maritime heritage of the area, which would include the boathouse down there at the Atwater Estate, bringing out the SS sailboats, fish house, the fish net that's rolled up over there by one of the bridges, that one that I think we restored it. They restored
we
it.
did. There were
Yeah.
the Great
there's a
Southampton
bunch of
Historical
stuff like
Museum
that.
did.
And where the mill used to be, and a lot of that stuff no one pays any attention to. I mean, students wouldn't, but it might be kind of fun.
Yeah, it's a great piece of property.
Yeah. You get that whole property, all that. It's got a
Yeah.
little meadow and
Yep. So
boat
there's
docks.
Yeah, there's a little bit of lawn.
Yeah.
There's access to docks on both,
Yeah.
from the building side and just to the north. So they will be, some of the docks will not be going as far north as they currently do.
Okay.
They'll be shortened slightly.
Well, it seems like CPF would be able to fund a mahogany speedboat to sit in there.
No,
1947, 36, some Dodge, could be any of them.
they weren't into rum running.
We'd keep
Oh,
it painted.
you sure about that?
Yeah, no, they were fisher people. Question, the two lots, are they both owned by CPF under the same auspices for historic preservation, or?
I believe they are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alright. And so tonight is the request is for landmarking, but we also have plans here for the restoration,
Mm-hmm.
which I would assume would require a COA if you're landmarking it, or we're landmarking it subject with these plans.
Yeah, I wanted to give you everything so that you
Mm-hmm.
I think it should be separate so that we can focus on it in a more careful way because our familiarity with this is also fairly new.
Mm-hmm. And if anybody wants to, come visit, happy to open it up.
So.
Yeah, I was going to suggest I would like to take a closer look at some of the plans, just
Sure.
because this is.
Yeah, we can't do anything until, the building's landmarked.
Right, but also I know you guys are probably going to be, or CPF is probably going to be putting this out to bid, and the time to review the plans and issue the COA would be before.
I'm not sure. I don't want to talk
Well,
out of time.
the COA is concerned about exterior events, not necessarily things that are internal for the structure.
But there are some things that are going to be visible from the exterior.
Yeah, there's going to be a raised platform for access.
Right, and then there's also the raising of the building itself.
Yeah.
So that will.
Yeah, well, I would suggest we take one step at a time as the appropriate mechanism. So that raises the question if there is, what do we find in terms of our criteria worthy of recommendation to the town board for landmarking it? And we have these 5 criteria to apply.
Yep.
Right.
Does it possess special character or historic or aesthetic interest of value as part of the cultural, political, economic, social history of the locale?
Yep. Certainly very
And
obviously related to
region.
fishing history.
So it's economic history that's involved here. That's primarily it, I would say.
A and E.
What's
I
that?
don't have the.
They're up on the wall there.
Say
Yeah, E as well.
E,
Yeah, E is
I thought A
definitely.
and E.
Mhm.
So
That's what I put in the report. And
the historic interest of value is its focus as a symbol of the fishing economy, maritime economy of the town of Southampton for a long period of time. Is that a good summary of it?
And I tried to look at aerials to see, I don't know, from the hurricane of 38, I'm sure there were others, but they may have been destroyed and not rebuilt. I think this may have been
The only one.
the only one that was rebuilt.
Yeah.
And it's still standing.
Yeah, if you look at that 1900 photo, there's 3 fish houses there that you can see. And there was one apparently north of the bridge as well as the one south of the bridge. The one north of the bridge never got rebuilt. And I think it's only Fletcher's that
Yeah,
got
so
it
kind of
rebuilt.
the importance of, to the family, to the community, that it be rebuilt, that they needed it.
Yeah.
It's important to note that the others were not rebuilt.
Well, let's just try to identify the details here.
Well, I mean, it's the
does
only
it-
one left.
Well,
Yeah.
it could be none left, but anyway, let's just look at the details here. Does it possess special character?
Yes.
It is distinctive, I would
Yes.
say, doesn't it? So it possesses special character, okay. It possesses historic interest as a symbol of the fishing and maritime economy of the town?
Yes.
Okay. So we find that is okay. It's not associated with society and the social history of the Hamptons or anything like that, so that's out. Now, is it identified with historic personages of the town, state, or nation?
Well, Fletch and Marvin were both town trustees, but I don't know if that rises to the
level.
Not
Level.
quality.
So we kind of don't, well, it's weak on the historic personage angle, okay, so. All right. Does it embody the distinguishing characteristic of an architectural type?
It's a classic
Well,
fish
it's a
shack.
classic
It's a
shack,
classic
yeah.
shack?
Yes.
I mean, that's stretching it a little bit, I
Fish
think.
house?
It's
Shack
a
is
classic
type?
fish house.
Ah,
If it was shaped a little more like a fish, it would be.
Well, if it still had its net reel. We
Well,
shall have to talk
the
about that
the architectural
sometime.
type is then a vernacular example of a practical structure for processing fish.
Yeah.
Yep.
Does that
Yeah.
sound right?
Processing fish, storing gear,
Stands
Very
out as
here.
one of a kind.
hiding
Okay,
in the rain.
all right, so we can put that, it does embody or disembody. Doesn't, I think, have elements of design or materials or craftsmanship which represent a significant innovation? No, so, okay.
It's innovative.
Well, those
Necessity
exterior
is the mother of
braces
invention.
are
Yeah.
rather innovative.
And certainly is the work of a design engineer, builder, artist, architect whose work has significantly influenced an age. That doesn't apply here, okay. Because of a unique location or singular physical characteristics, is an established and familiar visual feature of the neighborhood.
Yes.
Yes.
Is
Yes.
that
Yeah.
the case?
Yep.
Okay.
It is the
Yep.
case.
Familiar.
Very visible.
I'm unfamiliar with the neighborhood, so I'll take your word for it. Familiar visual feature, okay. All right. So we have a number of findings as to why it meets these criteria that we can put on a piece to recommend to the town board. Okay, are we all ready to accept that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Then I would ask for a motion to that effect.
Motion.
Motion by Vicky,
Second.
second by Tim. Any further discussion? All in favor of recommending this to the town board for landmark status, say aye. Aye. Okay, thank you. Motion carries. And that's the first step of progress for the restoration of this this structure. So,
These are
and
interesting things.
thank you, Julie, for putting together the report and presentation to start the march.
Yeah,
Yeah.
start the march.
So, and for our little few things remaining, 59 Montauk Highway, the landmark designation for the borough property, that is on the agenda for Tuesday, January 28th, for the public hearing and any action by the town board to designate. I do intend to put in the pitch for that, and perhaps Julie will be there too for the public hearing on the Borough Castle.
Yep, I'll be there.
Okay, so, on 65 Old Riverhead Road for the David and Mauricia Burliuk Home and Studio, I expect I've been working up the printed material, elaborating and adding some material to that which was presented by Julie, and I expect to be sending that off to the town board this week, Thursday or Friday. So.
Wanted to let you know that the family was quite impressed with your deep dive into Mr. Burliuk's history, so they were very appreciative.
Well,
they wanted to
glad
see
to,
your report. So.
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear that, and just remind me after the meeting. I wanted to ask you a question about that. Okay, so that's the status of that. 520 Montauk Highway, Shinnecock Hills. That recommendation stands in suspended animation, pending other events. Stony Brook Southampton Windmill is also in suspended animation, pending a communication and agreement between CPF and the State University of New York on the windmills meets and bounds on the property there. 11 Walnut Avenue, East Quogue is a landmarking recommendation in connection with an easement, and that is pending as well. And the same holds true for 149 South Country Road in Remsenburg, Spionk. So that is the status of those. The other matters are marginal, basically, to a lot of things that we're doing, or connected to some of the other things we're doing. Certified local government issues, or
I don't think there's anything.
nothing that we do have a new arrangement that is associated with getting everyone membership in the
New York, no, what's it called?
National
Alliance of
Preservation Commissions. Yes, and they periodically hold webinars and educational sessions that help to keep the Landmarks Board qualified as a potential expert body to offer the correct judgments on historic preservation in the town. So that's all an added benefit. I'm glad to hear my membership just expired, so I won't renew it. And thank you, Bill, for all the mathematics showing how to do it efficiently. That was.
So are we going to get notified directly? Because I only found out about the next seminar through your email.
So you still haven't gotten an email from the Alliance?
No.
It was my understanding that everybody would get an email. That's why we sent them an email list.
Mm-hmm.
When is that seminar coming up?
It's coming up, I think it's
30th.
next,
Yeah.
next week.
They didn't send me the
You
link,
could
but I'll
sign
figure
up
it
though,
out.
we used the code that was
Yeah,
provided, and
Don't wait
I
for
had
the
no
email.
problem to sign up.
Yeah, you have the code that David
Survey.
sent in his email.
Yeah.
So, that should allow
I
participation.
registered, but the link thing is,
The link didn't work for you, Susan?
they didn't send me an email saying,
Yeah, don't wait for it. I think they probably gotta upload that whole list.
yeah, so, but I'll figure it out before the 30th. But I'm registered.
So anything else to be brought before the landmarks board for this evening?
Is on the process.
Hearing nothing, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for coming out on a very cold night.
Thank you.
I should also just mention that Jeff Gibbons was not here because he had the flu. And so that completes our business.
Historical